Jamie from Bremerton, Washington. Welcome to the Narrow Path. Thanks for calling.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
My question for you is that I recently read an article about a company in Wisconsin that microchipped their employees. And growing up, I was always told by my parents, like, oh, don't let anything like that happen. That's going to be the mark of the beast. And so I know a lot of my Christian friends are kind of stressing out and freaking out over this. And I thought, I wonder what Steve has to say.
Well, there's been microchips around for a long time, and there's been a lot of people predicting, and I've heard these predictions for probably 30 years now, that someday someone is going to require you to put these microchips under your skin of your hand or on your forehead, and this will be the mark of the beast, which you read about in Revelation 13:18. And yet I don't see any reason to call that the mark of the beast. Why would a computer chip be the mark of the beast? You see, the mark of the beast in the Bible is something that if you take it, you're damned. Your soul is lost. Now, why would God, who for thousands of years has been saving people on the basis of their faith in Christ, suddenly change the terms of salvation to whether you have a chip in your hand or in your forehead or not? Especially if this is something that someone can make you do, that is, they can do it to you against your will. They can hold you down and insert it. Okay, well, how is God going to make something like that a basis of salvation or damnation when you might not even have any choice in the matter? People who think like that aren't thinking very clearly about the Bible, in my opinion. I believe the mark of the beast is not a literal physical thing. I think it's a reference to, well, the very next verse in Revelation, chapter 14, verse 1, says that there's a people that John sees that have the name of their father on their forehead. Well, okay, so the devil's people have the beast's name on their forehead, and God's people have God's name on their forehead, but neither literally has a tattoo. I don't think Christians literally have God's name written on their forehead, and I don't think that Satanists literally have the devil's name written on their forehead. So some of them might get a tattoo of it, but that's not what the Bible's talking about. What it is talking about is the fact that every reader of Revelation knew that you would sometimes see people in public who had someone's name or number or logo or brand on their forehead or on their hand. This was common practice with slaves who had run away and been captured again. They were then branded with their master's brand. And if you saw someone with this brand on their forehead or on their hand, you knew instantly to whom they belonged. In other words, having the beast's mark on your hand or forehead simply is an image for having those characteristics in your life that make it obvious to whom you belong, namely the devil's system. Whereas God's people have God's name on their forehead. They are his servants. I mean, they don't literally have the name on them, but the imagery of Revelation is there are servants of Satan and there are servants of God, and you can tell who they are. How can you tell? Well, the forehead and the hand, interestingly enough, are mentioned together in Deuteronomy 6 and several other places where God says he wanted Israel to bind his laws to their hand and between their eyes. Yeah. Remember? Now, he didn't really want them to physically do that. That's a figure of speech. What he means is he wants their hands, which represents their actions, their works, and their thoughts, which are represented by what's before their eyes, between their eyes. He wants their thoughts and their actions governed by his law. And to say that I have God's brand on my forehead and on my hands would suggest that I'm his servant, which you can see by my works and my thoughts. And you can also see who the devil's servants are by their works and their thoughts. That's his mark on their forehead and their hand. And so this is all very symbolic. Of course, the whole book of Revelation is very symbolic, but it has nothing to do with computer chips. And now the Bible nowhere says that the mark of the beast will be used as a substitute for cash. This is what is often said popularly, is that somehow we'll have a cashless society and the mark of the beast will be your credit number or whatever that you'll flash instead of money. But the Bible doesn't say anything like that. It does say that without the mark, they could not buy or sell. And so some people assume, so that must be that even if you have money, you can't buy or sell unless you have the mark. So it must be a cashless system. You need the mark to buy things. But again, understanding Revelation on its own terms, what we'd understand properly, I think, is that if you do not exhibit your loyalty to the beast, that is, if your thoughts and your actions are contrary to loyalty to the beast, then you'll be persecuted. And one of those forms of persecution is boycott. This has happened to Christians and Jews at various times in history, that as a form of persecution, people would not do business with them. They wouldn't buy or sell from or to them. So I think not being able to buy or sell has nothing to do with the availability or non-availability of cash, nor the use of a mark in order to buy things, but rather the mark is the mark of conformity to the world system. You think like the world, you act like the world, your thoughts and your actions. And if you don't, people are going to think you're strange, like Peter said, about your friends who think it's strange that you don't run with them anymore to the same excess of riot, he said, but they speak evil of you. It's when you go the other way from the way that culture is going that you get ostracized and persecuted in various ways. I think that not being able to buy or sell, that is being boycotted, is one very common form of persecution, which is mentioned here only to stand for all forms of persecution. It just means they'll be persecuted, similar to how the book of Revelation always talks about martyrs as being beheaded. Martyrs are always those who are beheaded for Christ. Well, some martyrs die other ways than that. Some were fed to lions. Some were burned at the stake. But beheading stands in as one kind of martyrdom to represent martyrdom in general. And I think being boycotted stands in for all forms of persecution, as it's a very common form of persecution that has been suffered by Christians and Jews throughout history. So I don't see that whole section about the mark of the beast in any way like the popular notion. If they do start making it mandatory to take such chips, I will resist it with every fiber in my body, but not because I think it has anything to do with the book of Revelation, but because I value my privacy more than that. I think I've already got too much government intrusion in my life. I don't want any more than that, and I'll do everything I can to prevent it, not because I see it as anything related to Bible prophecy.
That's kind of how I felt too, but I really appreciate you giving more information on all of it.
All right. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.